This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. I hope you enjoyed this Critical Thought, your daily discussion on game design. Hello everybody, this is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Welcome to today's Critical Thought. We are at a staggering 747 subscribers here on YouTube. Thank you so much for subscribing. I hope you're enjoying the content. Be sure to vote for what would you like to see for my 700 subscriber Let's Play reward. We may actually hit 800 before that happens. Again, we have a three-way tie between Mega Man Legacy Collection, Alone in the Dark, and Resident Evil Let's Break, and some plays of the latest Hitman. Again, the first vote will take it. Before we get to today's Critical Thought, one other bit of administrative news. If you haven't looked at the Patreon campaign, in mid-September I put up some early bird pricing rewards for all the rewards I have on the Patreon campaign. I am going to keep that up until the end of October. After that, I will take those prices down and you'll be left with the regular pricing for everything. So, if you'd like to donate and help Game Wisdom and get a little discount at the same time, be sure to check that out. For today's Critical Thought, this is going to be a pretty apt one because I just spent 2 hours today talking about it for a Perceptive podcast. And it's on the subject of narrative. Now, narrative in of itself, that is a multifaceted topic, and even within 2 hours of talking, we barely scratched the surface. But for today's Critical Thought, I want to talk about the balancing act of when you're trying to have both choice and gameplay together. And what it comes down to is the difference between morality and repercussions or consequences. As we've all seen, video games for over 16, maybe even a little later than that, have been trying to do more with storytelling, and especially with giving the player the ability to control the story, be it light side, dark side choices in Knights of the Old Republic, games like Undertale up there with different endings based on what you do, and of course the Telltale Adventure series such as The Wolf Among Us, The Walking Dead, etc. These games try to give the player the ability to control the story or the illusion of controlling the story. But the problem, and the subject for today's Critical Thought, is the issue with morality and consequences. What we see from a lot of video games when they're trying to let the player control things is they approach things purely from a morality point of view. Good and evil, light and dark, law and chaos, you name it. The problem with this is that when it comes to instilling gameplay to morality, it puts the developers in a very sticky situation. It comes off for a lot of games to look poorly if you say that evil is the best option. But at the same time, if you say that good's always good, then it sounds, good is always good, it also sounds kind of weird, but it's also hokey, and it doesn't represent real life. I believe in a previous Critical Thought we talked about the concepts of moving away from morality and focusing more on the choice, or getting away from that binary good and evil. In the previous Critical Thought I talked about the Shin Megami Tensei series featuring law, chaos, and neutral as their morality choices, and how they never came out and said which one was better or worse. Now, with video games trying to evolve, and from our discussion that I had earlier today, we talked about how the better options, instead of focusing on morality, is to focus on consequences. What's going to happen if you do this? And this is where we can really start to explore the gray scale when it comes down to different choices. Not good and evil, but different choices themselves. Here's an example. We all know murder is bad. It's something I think everyone has grown up knowing, it's a law, etc. So if a game asks you to kill someone, we know that's going to be a bad choice. with exception to, we're fighting monsters or demons, terrorists, you name it. But let's say we have a game where the choice is either you kill someone or someone's going to chop your arm off in retaliation or as payment. Now the choice isn't as simple. Now it becomes, which one of these bad situations can you live with? Can you live with murdering someone? Can you live with only having one arm? This is where things become interesting, and it starts to move away from just pure good and pure evil. We're getting into that moral gray, and more importantly, we're getting into humanizing these choices. In a lot of video games, good and evil choices, because they're based strictly on morality, become very easy to decide. Well, I'm a good person in real life, so I'm not going to kill innocent people. But when you start throwing in the human element, you start to see what these choices can impact. It makes things a lot more interesting. The example we talked about on the cast was from the original Witcher. For those of you who haven't played the Witcher series, it takes place in a fantasy world where humans live with dwarves, elves, and other magical creatures. But it's a very gritty world. There is rampant racism between the humans and the fantasy creatures. And in the first game, the developers ask you to make very tough choices about who you side with. But instead of presenting it as one side's good, one side's evil, it's again that murky gray. Here's an example. In an early quest, you have to decide to either save some elves from being persecuted by humans, or let the humans continue to beat them and possibly kill them. Now, in a traditional RPG or game with good and evil choices, obviously the good option would be save these people. They're being persecuted. And the evil one would be to let them go. But what the game does, if you decide to let those elves go, guess what happens? In a few minutes, you learn that those elves were planning a terrorist attack, and they attacked a group of innocent people, killing them mercilessly. Now your choice isn't as black and white. And the game presents a very interesting choice near the end when you decide what faction to follow. There's a great civil war, and who you decide to follow will get a lot of people killed. But if you choose not to side with anyone and let things play out on their own, you learn that there's more collateral and innocent damage than a swift, decisive victory if you just decide to side with the humans or side with the elves. And this is where choice becomes very fascinating. Again, we're moving away from just good and evil, but we're getting to repercussions and consequences. Now, there are some games that have tried this, but have not worked in one way or the other. And I hate to say it, but Undertale is an example of that. As we've said, Undertale is a brilliant game. It's a subversive take on RPG and the concepts of choice and morality. What makes it kind of not work is, as you know, there is the quote-unquote genocide ending. The very dark ending that has you basically becoming a cold-blooded murderer and scourge of the planet. The problem with this as a choice comes down to how it's presented. The first point is that there is no real explanation of it in the game. It's something you have to actively engage in order to get it. Now, to be fair, the game never comes out and says, go and kill everything that you see. And that's part of the game's envisionment of choice. But at the same time, it's not really presenting the player an option if they have to actively hunt it. Now, the game at the end mentions, it actually calls out people who simply played it just to see it. And that is kind of a cop-out. It's important to point out that whenever there are choices and consequences and repercussions in video games, you will always have players who will look at it from a purely mechanical point of view, to see it just to see it. These are the people like myself who see the forest for the trees. We're just doing this because we want to see what the developers implemented. It's not really a story or a morality choice at this point. And for me, I've said this in previous plays or previous videos and on podcasts, but whenever I play games revolving around morality choices, I tend to go evil first just to see what the developers wrote for that. Now, of course, I'm in the minority, and as we know, there are plenty of people who get invested in these characters. But that will always be a subsection of the people who play your games. And with Undertale, the fact that it's calling me out doesn't really say anything, because like I said, I went into it knowing at some point I wanted to try it. And there are people who are the same way. So it's not really a choice when it's presented in such a manner. And another major example, and sorry about wiping my eyes, my allergies are bothering me today, is from BioShock. As you know, BioShock tried to implement good and evil with its mechanics. You either save the little sisters, or you harvest them for the atom. The problem with this is that it's really a false choice. In the end, going the good route will earn you more atom than you would have otherwise, thereby making it the stronger choice. Also, the game is completely binary in these actions. The second you harvest one little sister, no matter what the case may be, you're evil. And that's where the problem with morality and consequences come in. When you look at things strictly from a morality or binary point of view, it becomes very gamey, and the choices loses their impact. With the BioWare games, I can be evil for 5 minutes, kill people, extort them, do all kinds of nasty things to them, and then completely make up for it by donating to a charity or saving 2 people. My actions before have been erased. We even see this in games like Infamous, numerous other games, Dante's Inferno, etc., where you have just this sliding scale of morality. Now, in games that are built around choice, the problem becomes that the developers are not able to really explore these things. It's not affecting the game, there's no repercussions, and Telltale's adventure games are perfect examples of this. I can be a heartless bastard to everyone, yell at them, punch them, do all kinds of things to them, but it's not going to change the story. The overall plot of the game is going to unfold the same exact way every time. What we want to see, and what I would love to see, are more games that do the Witcher's point of view, where it's not about the choice, whether it's ethically right or wrong, but it's about the consequences and the repercussions. On the podcast, I talked about this idea I would love to see, and I'm going to share with you before we wrap up today's critical thought. I would love to see someone try to do a game like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where it's less about good and evil, and it's more about trying to either resist or embrace your basic instincts. What if a character is beating you up as your Jekyll persona? Do you let them continue to beat you up and maybe even critically injure you? Or do you let Hyde come in and, brutally beat this person up? Either way, there's going to be consequences. Whether it's in the form of weakening yourself or, severely hurting you from that point on in the story, or maybe even causing a murder or having this person come back to avenge their beatdown. The point is that it's not about good and evil, but about that moral gray. Sometimes you have to make the right choice for the wrong reasons, or the wrong choice for the right reason. And there are always repercussions to your actions. Nothing just disappears in the ether. Like with Telltale, it's not about saying, oh, this person will remember that. I want to see that actually unfold. But to have a game like that is going to require one very clever writer and one hell of a story. So we're going to wrap things up here. I may have a post about this today by the time you watch this. I'm not sure at the moment, but I hope you enjoyed today's critical thought. If you have any comments about these kinds of consequences and morality in games, be sure to leave them below. I'm getting pinged on Skype, so I'm sure that's our cue to end. Thank you again to 747 subscribers here on YouTube. Again, I hope you enjoy the content, and be sure to vote for our big 700 Let's Play. Other than that, I'm Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoy the critical thought, and I'll be back tomorrow with another one and more great content here. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you all then. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.